I'm Keith Becker from Dee Dee's Rentals. We were talking about licensed childcare homes and what you can't do. And the simple answer is if it's a licensed childcare home, you can't refuse to allow it in your residence. You can't decline an applicant because of their intention of operating a licensed childcare home in your property. There are things you can do. One, if it's not licensed, you're under no obligation to allow it. The only protections provided by health and safety code and by the California Insurance Code are for those properties that are licensed by the state of California. If you've got somebody who's not licensed, you're under no obligation to abide by any of these expectations or requirements. Two, whether it's a small or a large child care home. A small child care home allows for 6 with a possibility of an additional 2. A large child care home allows for 12 with a possibility of an additional 2. Tenants are allowed that initial number, whether it's 6 or 12, but to get that additional 2, they have to request it of you, and you have to agree to it. You do have the authority to decide whether you want that additional 2 children in this operation. In addition to those types of minutia, there are also things that you can and should institute. One, you can and should increase or expect that the security deposit would be the maximum amount allowed by law in the state of California. And in the state of California, the maximum amount allowed by law is 2 times the amount of the monthly rent. So if your property that's going to rent for $2,000, make the security deposit $4,000. Even if under other circumstances you would not have charged that much, you are allowed to. And it does give you some greater coverage, some greater protection. You can request and expect of the tenant one of the following: liability insurance in the amount of a minimum of $100,000 per occurrence and $300,000 total annual aggregate. I know, $300,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it's what the Health and Safety Code allows for. Many licensed childcare home operators actually already have policies greater than that amount, but it's not actually mandatory that insurance is provided because there are alternatives. Alternative number 2 is that the licensed child care home provider carries a bond in the aggregate amount of $300,000, or the licensed child care home provider has a file of affidavits signed by each individual parent of each child that is being cared for that acknowledges that each parent understands and accepts that there is no insurance coverage for this operation. Those are 3 different options. Now, the fact is that if you do have a tenant who has insurance, you can ask to be named as additional insured on that policy. However, there are restrictions to that. One, it can't result in the tenant's insurance policy being terminated. And 2, if there's an increase in the amount of the policy premium for adding you as additional insured, you have to expect to pay that increase. Lastly, you can insure and request that the tenant insure at their own expense all requirements of the state fire marshal. I would encourage you, if you have a tenant who's going to be operating a licensed child care home in the property, that you inspect it on a regular basis. But I will also tell you that this is, given the circumstances, my experience has been that tenants operating licensed child care homes are as responsible, maybe even more so, than other tenants. And part of the reason is because they are indeed licensed by the state of California. The state of California can show up unannounced any day and do an inspection. So they have an obligation, they have an inherent responsibility themselves to make sure that they are not operating their licensed childcare home in a way that might jeopardize their own license, and by extension, in a way that would jeopardize your property. There are ways of providing yourself with some level of confidence, assurance, and protection in this situation, because you do not ever want to turn down an applicant simply because they want to run a licensed child care home. You do not ever want to try to evict, raise rent, or in any other way take punitive action against a tenant simply because they are presently or want to run a licensed child care home in a rental residence. Property management is a complicated business. We're here to help simplify it. Please call me if I can be of any assistance. I'm Keith Becker from Dee Dee's Rentals.